These are historic and deeply worrying times, an era of immense uncertainty and anxiety on many fronts, domestically and internationally. No one, even decision makers, knows with high confidence how events will unfold in the coming days, let alone in the months and the years to come. Doesn't mean that our opinions are invalid, but it does mean that we should maintain a degree of humility. Our knowledge of what is actually happening is limited, and our capacity to predict the future even more so. In this spirit, I share with you my sentiments as the first week of the war comes to a close by making the following 5 points. 1, I hate war. I do not get excited when I see shock and awe campaigns. Those cool-looking stealth warplanes are instruments of death, even if unleashed in a righteous cause. Innocent people die in war. Warriors die in war. Judaism has always aspired to days of tranquility and peace, when nations will know war no more, and all shall sit under vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid. Overwhelmingly, our heroes were scholars, teachers, philosophers, rabbis, people of intellect and compassion, not military figures. Who is a hero? The Talmud asks. He who turns an enemy into a friend. We are not pacifists. There are occasions, and Judaism discusses these at great lengths, when the refusal to use force is not only unwise, but downright immoral. Still, Judaism never ceased teaching that war is the last resort, and when it became necessary, it constituted a breakdown of the moral order and an impoverishment of the human spirit. 2, from 6:29 a.m. on October 7th, 2023, all roads were bound to lead back to Tehran. I remember waking up on that Shabbat Simchat Torah day, and even within the fog of war, thinking to myself that what happened was a cataclysmic event, unlike any other we have seen or known. I remember discussing with our congregants at our morning services that what was will no longer be, that the coming war would not simply be a continuation of the years-long tit-for-tat between Israel and Hamas. It would change Israel. It would change the Middle East and the world entire. Hamas and Hezbollah, who joined the fray 24 hours later, were Iranian proxies, built, supported, and maintained with huge efforts and investments over decades by the Iranian regime for just this purpose: to attack, weaken, and eventually destroy Israel. Iran surrounded Israel with a proxy of death, and to remove the threat was always going to require taking off the head of the snake. The distinction between Hamas and Iran, Hezbollah and Iran, the Houthis and Iran would no longer be tenable. 3, there are reasons to be very concerned about this war, beyond even the moral pain caused by so much death and destruction. Wars are easier to start than to end. The enemy has a say in how wars unfold and conclude. There are valid questions of legality and legitimacy, both domestic and international. The objectives of the war are not clearly articulated, understood, or supported by the American people, a condition that will haunt the war effort if casualties mount and the war continues to spread and the economic pain intensifies. Congress should be involved and should conduct a thorough debate. They are the representatives of the people. There is enormous uncertainty about the day after. When will the attacks end? And when they do, what will happen in Iran? And how will it impact on international commerce and security? If the nuclear facilities were completely obliterated in June, why is there a nuclear threat now? These and many more objections raised by critics in the past week are all legitimate. 4. But it is not enough to highlight the risks of action. We must also address the risks of inaction by understanding the nature of the Iranian threat. In history, wars have become much worse and much more catastrophic when the good guys failed to stop the bad guys when they could. And then historians ask why the country slept through what Churchill called the locust years, years that were eaten up by neglect and appeasement. Since no one can predict the future, there is a chasm of uncertainty about our current actions. But it is not enough to say Americans don't want to get involved in foreign wars. Foreign wars have a way of involving you, whether you want it or not. They come to your shores, your homes. No person and no country is an island entirely unto itself. The Iranian threat is not only military, economic, and political, it's also ideological. We must grapple seriously with the ramifications of allowing this radical and extreme theocracy to sow such chaos around the world, promoting and inspiring legions of followers towards a religious conviction that the United States, Israel, and Western civilization itself are satanic and must be destroyed. Death to America. Death to Israel. These are not just slogans. They really mean it. It's difficult for Westerners to fully grasp the nature of this kind of religious fanaticism. We are raised in the culture of the Enlightenment, a philosophy of reason, tolerance, liberty, democracy, peace. Our system of government is secular. We assume that reasonable people, through dialogue and compromise, can reach an agreement that is in their mutual interests. But the supremacy of the radical ideology of the Ayatollahs constitutes a totally different mode of thinking. It is a constant threat to everything we hold dear and impervious to Western concepts of pluralism. To my mind, this debate about imminence, whether the threat posed by Iran was an imminent threat, to my mind, is not the main issue. I understand why the argument is framed that way, It is related to international and domestic legal and political considerations. If we mean by imminence that Iran would have attacked America or American assets on February 28th, had America and Israel not struck first, then of course Iran didn't pose an imminent threat. But if the nature of the Iranian threat, not only short-term but long-term, is profound and for Israel existential, for me, it is enough to argue that the United States and Israel saw a once-in-a-generation opportunity to strike and took it. There's no moral obligation to wait until the enemy fires on you. This principle is well established in Jewish law and modern legal and moral systems. Iran is at its weakest since 1979. There is no moral obligation to wait until it gets stronger. Does anyone think that this radical regime will change its theology? Will they be less disposed to killing Americans when they have more capacities, more missiles? They've been waging war against the United States and the West for decades. Would they stop now? And why? Can they be contained short of war? Maybe. Was this the only way to address the threat? Maybe not. But if you were Israel after October 7th, and after spending 12 days in shelters in June of last year, would you take that risk? That was Israeli policy until 6:29 a.m. on October 7th. Try and manage the Iranian proxies. How did that work out? For this reason, with all of the current hardship in Israel, people have been killed, including people close to us here in the synagogue. Despite all of this, there is the broadest possible consensus in a notoriously politically divided Israel supporting the war effort from one edge of the political spectrum to the other. And if you're making decisions on behalf of the United States, with half a century of enmity from a radical Iranian regime, having tried for decades to negotiate with Iran, while Iran threatens all of your allies in the Middle East and the world's oil supply, would you take that risk? Knowing that every day you wait, Iran builds more missiles and acquires more arms? Maybe. If you were taking the decision, maybe. It's entirely legitimate to question the nature and the effectiveness of the response to this Iranian threat. Is this the right way? Is this the right time? What happens next week, next month? Is there a plan? But for me, the question of imminence is secondary to an honest debate about the nature of the Iranian threat. And if the threat is consequential enough, act to diminish it when circumstances are favorable to you. And the threat is profound. The regime is abhorrent and evil. It slaughtered up to 30,000 of its own citizens last month in 2 days. It has oppressed and murdered Iranians and so many others around the world for close to half a century, sowing chaos and death in all four corners of the globe, including against American military and diplomatic personnel, beginning in 1979 with the taking of American hostages. Iran never abandoned its desire to build nuclear weapons and concluded from the June war that it needed both a nuclear and ballistic missile arsenal to protect itself from being attacked again. And they looked to the North Korean model. That horrible regime is now protected from the international community because it is a nuclear power. Iran was producing 100 ballistic missiles a month. Look at the enormous destruction that even one ballistic missile causes if it gets through the air defenses. Even cheap $20,000 drones that Iran manufactures in enough quantities to supply Russia with its war against Ukraine. Even drones constitute a huge threat. It seems clear that the United States and Israel hope to topple the regime by damaging its apparatus of internal oppression. It is the regime that is the source of the threat. I think that both countries, Israel and the United States, concluded that even if the regime survives for the time being, it would still be an enormous achievement to so weaken Iran that it could no longer have the capacity to project power abroad, stripped for a very long time of its nuclear and ballistic missile capacity and defanged from supporting proxies. What will emerge is uncertain and unclear, but I think personally that there is an assumption among military and civilian policymakers that anything that replaces this regime would be better than this current regime. That's how I see it. And even if what emerges is equally bad, at least it will take many years to restore Iran's capacity to cause havoc around the world. 5, the accusation that Israel dragged the United States into war is absurd and malicious. You mean to tell me that little Israel, country of 10 million, too small to even find on a map? You know, you ever see those maps of the Middle East and the Mediterranean? Israel is spelled out way into the Mediterranean Sea because it can't fit into the borders of its country. That little Israel dragged the greatest superpower the world has ever known, a country of 350 million people, into war against its will? Really? Everything is about Jews manipulating the world? The Lilliputians bound Gulliver against his will? America is incapable of independent thinking about its own national interests, one of which, by the way, is to protect allies and friends around the world? This week, Tucker Carlson bizarrely blamed Chabad for the war. Chabad. Exposing it and all Jewish institutions to increased danger. This is how the next Bondi Beach is fomented. I have my own criticisms of Chabad, but being responsible for the war with Iran is not one of them. What has become ever clearer since October 7th is that Israel might actually be America's most dependable ally in the world. Relentlessly pro-American, irrespective of what political party is in power, ready and capable to share the burden of supporting American interests. These accusations against Israel should concern us deeply. They are being mainstreamed in both political parties. The comments this week by Governor Newsom, did you see those? Who implicitly blamed Israel for the war, is the starkest evidence yet of how difficult the years to come will be for our community politically. Leaders of the Democrat Party are signaling to us that they believe that in order to be elected, at least to get through the primaries, increasingly it is an electoral impediment to be seen as supporting Israel. And I worry that the Republican Party is just a few years behind. And by the way, so what if Israel tried to persuade the United States to pursue a certain policy? So what? Every country on earth does this. America is the preeminent global power. The policies of the United States matter to every country in the world. Riyadh, too, lobbied the administration to launch the war and take out the Iranian threat against Saudi Arabia. Other Gulf states did as well, quietly. Only the Jewish state is prohibited from lobbying the American state? Of all the states in the world? Some of you have joined our missions to Europe. We like to visit Babi Yar when we're in Ukraine. I promised when the war started 4 years ago that we sent a delegation to Poland, and I promised that we would go back to Ukraine once the war ended. It never entered my mind that it would be 4 years and counting. But when the war ends, we will go back to Ukraine and help rebuild the country. Do our part, contribute some supplies, and offer emotional support. And when we visit Ukraine, we tend to go to Babi Yar, where 33,000 Jewish citizens of Kiev were marched into a steep ravine and gunned down in September 1941. Our delegation stand in silence over that ravine, asking ourselves over and over again, how could this have happened? The ironclad lesson of Jewish history that we neglected on October 6th is that when someone threatens to kill Jews, believe them. When a nation threatens to annihilate the Jewish people, believe them. And take measures, preemptive if necessary, to protect yourself and eliminate the threat. I pray that the years to come will be more peaceful, that having successfully defanged Iran, new opportunities for regional cooperation will develop. If America and Israel achieve their objectives, there will be exciting new opportunities to forge new alliances and new pathways to economic prosperity. Chasms of questions and uncertainty remain. To paraphrase Churchill after El Alamein, this will not be the end or even the beginning of the end, but it may be the end of the beginning. May God bless and protect the brave soldiers of the United States Armed Forces. May God bless and protect the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. And I pray that in the words of the Bible, after Deborah and Barak's victory over the Canaanites, Vatishkot haaretz 40 shana, and the land of Israel was tranquil for 40 years.